Hello and welcome to Throttle Stop Garage How-To Series. Alright, in this episode we're going to have a very quick look at how to make dimple dies, or just how to dimple sheet metal. My intent is to run a few of these throughout the life of the channel. I'll try to add some extra content on how I'm doing things. I haven't been doing that so far. I primarily just sort of give you the rundown on what's going on the project more than I actually tell you any great detail on how things work. Are getting popular, right? I mean, it's been popular for a number of years. Everybody wants to have the fancy speed hole look on their car and make it look like a race car, join their roll cage into their A-pillar, whatever. Anyway, the dies that are getting sold to make these are really expensive. So I've seen a few videos on YouTube on how to make them. I thought I'd join in. I don't make them the way that they make them, so I just thought I'd show you how. So I just grabbed a piece of scrap and punched some holes in it with the old hole saws. You can see some of the layout marks there. It's just to plot how these are going to lay out. It's 20 gauge. So what is that? About 1 mil? It's not very thick. 20 gauge is pretty typical auto body style sheet metal. So there's nothing fancy with it. So we've cut some holes. This could be a closing panel or it could be a something. It's just scrap for me. So I'll just show you how it's done. I'm going to use two different methods. One that's it's going to seem insane when I do it, and you'll want to look away maybe. The other one's a little bit more standard. So anyway, I'm going to start with the smallest and work my way up to the biggest, and I'm going to show you how I do it. Okay, so in order to effectively shape sheet metal, all you need is a tool and you need a die of some sort. In this case, nothing fancy with the die. The die is a standard, in this case, a 12-point, 27mm socket. I didn't pick the size for any reason other than that's kind of the size of the edge that I want when I'm forming the sheet metal. So standard socket, and hey, it's lifetime guaranteed. So if I break it, I can always just go back and get a new one. And the tool is actually the end of a bolt. It's a rather large bolt that I found one day while walking down the train tracks. So this is just the bolt that bolts the tracks together. Nothing fancy. All I did was I took there were letters and things on here that were raised. It's a nice forged part. This railway stuff's fantastic. And I just cut the end off of it the other day just to make this tool because I'm making some dimple plates on my project. And I thought, well, that'll work. That'll work just great. One into the other and you're away. The secondary thing that you need to remember is you don't need fancy tools in order to make sheet metal move and work. And you don't need to hit it very hard. So whenever you're doing this kind of thing, if you're used to driving nails or hitting bolts in anger on your car, remember sheet metal is very thin and it moves really easily. It's not hard to move it. I'm using 20 gauge in this particular example today. I could just as easily do this at a 18 or 16 or whatever. You know, pick your thickness and we'll be fine. Just don't hit it very hard and don't try to get it all done at once. And always remember, whatever you did, you can always go back, and sheet metal is reasonably cheap. So if you make a mess, try it again until you get it right. Okay, so that's going to be the first method. The second and ever so slightly more brutal method involves a standard cap. I've used these for a long time to make like bolt recesses and other little things on car. Sometimes when you're restoring cars, you need certain shapes, and restoration panels don't always have the little dimples. Like they might have cut the hole, but they may not have put the dimple, which reinforces the steel. It makes it less flimsy. And urethane mallet. And the one fits into the other, and you're just going to whack, and away you go, dimple die. So all I've done with these, and I have a number, I have a few. I'll make a couple today. So all you need with these is I've gone ahead and sanded all around the edge. These are galvanized, so they're all rough and crappy. So I've sanded around the edge, and I've given it a nice radius on the outside edge, and I've given it a 45-degree bevel to the inside edge. Nothing to it. I don't have a lathe. I don't have fancy tools. I just have grinders and things. Okay, so let's get to... we're going to go over to the hydraulic press first and show you how to make a simple dimple on the hydraulic press. Or watch my channel normally. This is my furnace. It's on all the time. I'm in Canada. It's winter. I don't know. You get used to it. The battle. It's the battle with the furnace. Try to hear your voice and make things work. Okay, so we are over at the press. It's all of 10 tons. This press couldn't do 10 tons. I don't know what the 10 Chinese tons. It's not real tons. Okay, so the first thing I want to do here is just roughly center the die and the tool on the press. I'm going to take my part, right, insert, center it. This is the only real advantage to the store-bought dies, is that they allow you to center the hole. But to be honest, it's never really been that big a problem to center a hole. It doesn't have to be super precise, because you can always adjust it later. Okay. Couple of quick checks. And I'm done. Dimple plate. I lined that up by eye. You watched me do it. So it's not bad. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. Now, the thing that you end up with all the time whenever you do that is the plate's now popped up, right? We don't want that. We want our plates to be nice and straight. So sometimes we can just sort of hand manipulate it back down, just sort of bend it back down. But the one thing that you can do if you're using this kind of technique, because it works really bench, I've got a little anvil here that I use all the time for sheet metal work. I'm just going to set my die back on the plate. I'm going to grab a urethane hammer and we're just going to tap it. No, we're not hitting it as hard as it sounds, just in order to bring that panel back up. Okay, so that's method number one. How easy was that? Next up, we're going to do the next size. So we're going to take the die. We're going to place it on the sandbag, and the sandbag's there just to make sure the die doesn't go flying somewhere, and to help me roughly center it. We're going to roughly center the sheet metal part in the die. Kind of get our center. Not trying to get there all at once. Now we could put the mallet into the press if we wanted to. But we just work our way around the edge. And again, we've got our little dimple plate made. In this case, it's buckled up quite a bit more. Go back and forth a couple of times just until you're happy. There, pretty happy with that. That looks all right. If it needs to be, perfectly centered, I'm doing this in real time, so there, that lip needs to come down a little bit more. So we touch these things up and get them to go. You really notice the difference in the stiffness of the plate as you start knocking these dimples into things. Works really well for that purpose. Simplest of tools. Simplest of tools. And back to flat. Okay. So that's the first, that's the two methods that I'm going to show you today. I'm going to bash this last one out and we'll come back and show you the finished product when we're all done. And there we have the finished dimpled plate. You can see we've got some reasonable dimples there. They all look good to me. You know, again, that's what you can do with just a mallet and a simple set of dies, and it cost me $10. So hopefully you enjoyed that video. It was fun doing something a little different for a change. So there's the dimple plate all finished up. There you can see the holes. They turned out really nicely. Totally happy with those. It's not Hollywood. I'm basically doing this in real time. It only takes a second. I mean, it's a little bit more work than a standard set of the $300 or $400 punch dies, but it doesn't do the job's no different, right? So again, with a little bit of know-how and some very simple tools, most sheet metal work is well, it's actually reasonably straightforward. So don't forget, continue to sort of learn and try to get these things done for yourself. Anyway, if you're only making a few plates and it's not worth spending $300 or $400 on a set of dimple dies, and you want lots of different sizes, random things, different shapes, then don't be afraid to just try some of this stuff. Anything that I have in my shop is always available as a sheet metal tool or die. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next episode.